What you're about to watch is a love story. It won't seem like that at first, but be patient. You'll see. I'm a triathlete, sometimes as an individual where I do the swim, bike, and run myself, and sometimes as a cyclist for Team Connect, a relay team. As an individual triathlete, I'm pretty average, a few second-place finishes and a lot more in the middle of the pack. But Team Connect, that's another story. My son Hugh is our swimmer, and one of my business partners, Holly Hagerman, is the runner. I handle the bike. Over the past 5 years, we've competed in 24 races around the country, nearly always on the podium. We won at Escape from Alcatraz, South Beach Tri, Vineman Monte Rio, and in July of 2018, the New York City Triathlon. I'm not a great climber, but that's precisely why I do my training on the toughest climb I can find, Gibraltar Road. Gibraltar is a really tough Tour de France level climb. 6 miles straight up, averaging 8% the whole way. My first time up Gibraltar, I only made it a third of the way. Second time, halfway. I made it all the way on my third attempt, but was the second slowest rider ever, according to Strava. I kept working on it. After 100 climbs up Gibraltar, my time was ranked a little more than 6,400th of the nearly 11,000 riders who have made that climb. Okay, still not great, but so much better than second worst. But what I lack when climbing, I make up for descending. Gravity is my friend and pulls me down the mountain at speeds reaching 40 miles an hour. I love it. The views are amazing and the speed is intoxicating. I've done this ride more than 100 times. I know it like the back of my hand. But today is about to be very different. Around the next blind turn, there's a truck coming up the mountain. He's going fast and will swerve into my lane. By the time I see him, it'll be too late. I'll have no hope of reacting. The impact will last just 0.2 of a second. And that's where this story begins.
So it was Saturday late afternoon and my phone rang and the voice on the other end wasn't Neil's. All I heard was, there's been an accident. So I called back and this time I heard Neil moaning in the background and I said to the man who answered the phone, please tell me where you are. And the phone went dead again. Eventually I just decided to get in the car because I knew Neil's bike route really well. As I went up Gibraltar, there was a motorcycle coming down, a man and wife, and so I waved them to the side and asked if they'd seen an accident. And the woman on the back of this motorcycle said, there's been a very bad accident, but it's way up the mountain. So as I continued to the top, the Santa Barbara fire chief was coming down in his truck, and I waved him over. And I said, my husband is the cyclist. And he looked at me and he said, we didn't get there in time. He followed that with, we didn't get there in time to see him. A helicopter has taken him to Cottage Hospital, and your job is to turn around and safely follow me there.
At about 5:30 that evening, I got a phone call from my mom saying, I don't know what's happened, but your dad's been in an accident, and I'm headed to the hospital. I'd like you to be ready in 15 minutes.
And we really didn't say much. We drove to the hospital, we checked in at the ER, and they didn't have any information because Neil hadn't come through the front door, he'd come through the roof. So we went outside and sat on this lovely bench and just waited. Before long, the CHP who'd been on the scene arrived, and he opened his trunk and pulled out something that I thought was a wheelchair, and Ken leaned over and said, Mom, that's Dad's bike.
And I think that was the first time where the severity of the accident actually hit home for me. I've seen that bike 100 times, and to see it broken that badly was surreal.
Ken had assured me if something really bad had happened, that they would have come out to get us because they would have needed more information. About 2.5 hours passed, and finally someone came out and led us back to the room where Neil was in the ER.
My dad had blood all over his face. He had open cuts and lacerations across his forehead, broke his nose in multiple places, and was kind of in and out of cognitive thought.
Your dad is always, you look to as, invincible and strong, and to see him, in that state was difficult.
I remember being so grateful just to get to see him. I also remember putting on just a really good face. I went in and smiled and looked him right in the eye and said, "Hey, you're gonna be fine." And as I looked at him, I really wasn't sure that what I was saying was true, but I was absolutely gonna make sure that he knew that I thought it was true. The last time I'd seen him, he was a man who could conquer just about anything. And now he was very badly broken.
To have an accident with this severity within a few miles from the hospital is very fortuitous. We're the only level 1 trauma center between Los Angeles and San Francisco. If you're bleeding to death, that sometimes doesn't take very long to do. Neil's injuries included 4 transverse processes broken off of his lumbar spine. He broke his left wrist. He had a severe sprain to his right wrist, multiple soft tissue lacerations, including his forehead, his shin. He had a tibial plateau fracture, which is quite a serious injury around the knee. He had 7 broken ribs. Some were broken in multiple places. He had a pneumothorax, which is where the lung collapses a little bit. He had a macerated injury to the middle of his forehead, and he had a hematoma on his brain, or a collection of blood in the brain.
And the very first thing I thought when I walked in was, it looks as though my dad's face has been peeled off. It looks as though his nose has been cut off. It looks as though his forehead has been pulled back. Here's someone you love so much, and you have no idea the extent of the accident or what has happened, and you see something so horrifying, and it completely knocked me off my feet.
It was really hard to leave Neil that night, but I knew I needed a good sleep, and I had faith that he was going to be okay and that he was going to be there when I showed up in the morning.
And I remember coming in and sitting there, and it was nice. I had some time with my dad, and there were nurses and there were doctors and people were in and out. But I remember thinking, I'm glad that I can be here. I'm glad that I can see him, because it felt scary. It felt scary to be there as a visitor. I can only imagine how it must have felt being the patient.
So Sunday morning when I woke up, I finally started to realize what had happened to me.
Well, with those many ribs broken, it's very easy to be afraid to take a deep breath or not take a deep breath because of the pain. And that sets you up for getting a pneumonia. Catching a pneumonia at home is bad. Catching a pneumonia in the hospital can be life-threatening.
So he had ribs 5 through 10 broken in multiple places, and the first rib broken in one place. It's very hard to break your first rib. It's shorter, it's fatter, and it's much more protected than the other ribs. And so that indicates a large force, and we usually start looking for very severe internal organ damage when someone breaks a first rib.
That was the first I knew I had broken any bones.
When multiple ribs break in multiple positions, there are nerve arteries and veins that run under those ribs, and so they're torn in that trauma. And both the sharp end of the rib and tearing those vessels underneath the ribs causes bleeding. So you get bleeding in the chest, which makes it further difficult to breathe.
I was called because of the tibial plateau fracture, which is a crush injury to the surface of the bone that you walk on in your knee. When it's been beaten down, dented, or shattered, that makes it much harder to put the pieces back together.
He had almost 1.5 liters of blood between the lung and the broken ribs. The treatment for that is a chest tube. So we elected to do that at the time he had his orthopedic procedure. That way he was already under general anesthesia.
It was felt that for a high-performance athlete who's going to want to have full function, that bringing it back to the operating room to put it back into position to try and reconstruct the joint surface would be the best possible outcome for him.
The first week in 3 Ridley Tree was still pretty tough. Neil was very badly broken, and he was waiting for an operation on his leg. He prepped and got ready for the first day, but got bumped. There wasn't any room for him. So he prepped and got ready for the second day, and there still wasn't any room for him.
Friday morning was different from the second I woke up. They got me in the gurney, they got me down to the OR, got me prepped, put me under. Next thing you know, I'm being wheeled back to my room. The operation's been a success. I get there and there's a physical therapist waiting for me, and she said, "Mr. Myers, we want to get you up out of bed and we want you to walk." I couldn't believe it, because just 24 hours earlier I'd been so depressed about being immobile, and now I was going to be able to walk. And I said, absolutely. So they got me out. I probably spent 20 minutes walking out. I don't know, maybe 25 steps, not that much, but it was a lot of work. So I got back in bed and I was so tired, ready for a nap. And they said, no, we'd like to now work for a while. For an athlete who had been training pretty much daily for the last 5 years, that sounded good to me. So he did maybe 30 minutes of all sorts of leg exercises, flexibility, strength, felt really good. And then I was able to have lunch and take a nap, and I think I had probably the best sleep I'd had since the accident.
I recently admitted somebody to the hospital that had very similar injuries to Neil. Initially, we thought this person was going to make it out of the hospital, but unfortunately, he succumbed to his injuries. I think what really helped Neil was that he was an athlete. That's what really helped him from suffering some of the complications that can be life-threatening after an injury like this.
So you're talking about very dense tissue that has the capacity to buffer any kind of injury. And then after, when he's lost all that blood and he's brought into the hospital, you think about how is he going to survive? And the way he's going to survive is going to be off the skeletal muscle that he already has.
My doctor said I would fully recover, but I wondered what recovery would look like. I asked Dr. Bai if I'd be able to cycle again. A cyclist himself, he said, absolutely, cycling's fine. It's sitting on the couch that will kill you. I decided to define recovery for me as regaining fitness. I needed something to train for, so 1 week after my accident, I signed up for the 2019 Santa Barbara Triathlon. And from that point forward, I was laser focused on one goal: cross that finish line. Tiffany Janelle was one of my nurses, and as I was getting ready to transfer to cottage rehab, she was talking to me about how that was going to be. And right in the middle of our conversation, my ribs seized up. It was kind of like a leg cramp, except it was every part of my core. And because I had so many jagged edges, everything hurt at once, and it just took my breath away.
Completely went into this red hot pain, and I could see it in his eyes. And for the first time, I think I saw Neil panic a little. I knew exactly what it was, just given my experience. He really just needed to find his inner strength.
So Tiffany was all over it. She just grabbed me by the shoulders, looked me in the eye and said, "Neil, I can't make this pain stop, and neither can you."
And pain does not control you, and you are above this pain. I know you know that, because daily you put your body through all of this pain, and this is just one more time, and it's not going to control you.
So Tiffany said, "Neil, this is going to happen again, and I won't always be there, so let me train you on how to handle this." So she did, and in fact it did happen again, several dozen times more when in the hospital, but also it happens to this day. But now I know how to handle it. So that Saturday, 2 weeks after the accident, I was transferred to Cottage Rehab Hospital. Cottage Rehabilitation Hospital is an amazing resource here in town. They have the best doctors, therapists, they have amazing facilities. It's a place where if you've had traumatic injuries, you go to rehabilitate and get ready for the rest of your life. They work you from first light until dinner time, and there's a lot you do. In my case, I had psychological therapy, I had physical therapy for my legs and my wrists. I had cognitive therapy to deal with the impacts from hitting my head on a truck at 35 miles an hour. And then I had something called occupational therapy, learning how to cope with all your injuries and still get through your day-to-day routine.
When I get assigned to a patient, it's almost like a journey that they didn't want to go on, and it's the hardest journey and the hardest mountain they will ever climb.
So for example, imagine trying to put socks on when you have 7 broken ribs, 2 broken wrists, and a broken leg. Lena, my occupational therapist, taught me how to do that, and a whole host of other things. Things like how do you take a shower when you're this banged up? How do you get in and out of a car? I was originally scheduled to stay at Cottage Rehab for about 3.5 weeks, but I had entered so fit that I was able to make progress a lot quicker than that, and after 12 days, I was ready.
When you think about high-quality skeletal muscle, if you are a lifelong athlete, you build your functional fitness bank account. When an individual is injured and they go through rehab, their capacity to recover, they will make exponential improvements as opposed to someone else.
What all of Cottage had done for me had been incredible. They saved my life, they healed me, rehabilitated me to where I was able to be on my own, and it was time for me to go home.
And so when we got in the door, I asked Alexa to play Celebrate Me Home.
And it was amazing. She had pictures on every wall of us, of the kids, of the grandkids.
Neil just started to shake. He was absolutely overwhelmed.
And then I noticed something that in all the commotion of the last 3.5 weeks I had lost sight of, which was today was our 35th wedding anniversary. And I just lost it.
And I leaned in and said, "Happy anniversary." And the two of us just held on to each other. And honestly, I think we listened to that song every day since, because there isn't a moment that I don't celebrate him home. When Neil was released from Cottage Rehab, it was easy for the two of us to assume that we were on our way, that now we were ready, we were going to handle this. We had no idea how hard the first 2 weeks would be.
It was hard being home. First of all, we weren't equipped the same way as the hospital. I didn't have that really nice hospital bed that they have that's adjustable every different way. But the second problem was I was getting addicted to the opiates, and they just weren't working as well. I would take a dose in the evening before bed, and it would take about 30 minutes to kick in. And then it would only work for about 40, 45 minutes, and I'd wake back up again. And then it was hand-to-hand combat all night, trying to find a way to sleep.
Pain was the biggest problem, especially at night.
What I realized was I was nowhere near done. I had a lot more work to do. Difference was it was on Lee and I now, so we realized we needed to start making appointments. The first appointment I'd actually made from the hospital was with Lindsay Watt, my physical therapist.
Neil was so excited to get in the car and go down to Elite Performance and see Lindsay, his physical therapist.
Lindsay had been with me all through my triathlons, and so she knew exactly who I was, how hard she could push me. And I really like Lindsay because she was a competitive gymnast, and gymnasts are always injured, so she knows about competing injured, and she had that perspective, which I found valuable.
First day I saw Neil, he came in a wheelchair with his wife Lee, and his leg was in a full straight leg brace.
Elite is the place where he trains, where he works out, where things improve, and he knew that this was the new start of this journey for him.
So once we wheeled him in to the treatment room, I asked him if he could get onto the table, and he said, "No problem," and just came up on one leg and hopped around, swiveled around, and got himself up onto the table. So at that moment, I knew this is Neil. He has not changed. He has the drive. He wants to get better, and I knew he was going to do whatever he had to get to his end goal.
The fun thing for him was Lindsay immediately put him on a stationary bike. I was sitting there thinking, what in the world is she doing? This guy's broken. But the delight on his face said it all. Neil just beamed. Most nights were slumber parties with Neil. He would wake up and want to just talk.
One of those nights, I thought to ask Lee, what was your day like the day of our accident? And as I sat there and listened to what she went through, I realized she had had a horrible day. The entire time since then had been a lot of work, so I was crushed. This has really affected all of us. The last doctor I saw was a PTSD specialist.
Part of what was concerning to Neil was that he didn't have a lot of memory.
Can't tell you how many people have said it's such a blessing you don't remember that, but I disagree.
Here's a guy who seems to have a life philosophy of being able to really face whatever's in front of him.
I finally realized there just are no memories. There's nothing to recover. They simply don't exist.
But one of the things that we see when we're in situations that are traumatic, the amygdala starts sending messages to other parts of the brain like, uh-oh, the higher functioning parts of the brain diminish in activity. That's one reason often people won't remember things right around accidents.
But why then do I cry when I hear an air ambulance? On a business trip, I read a Scientific American article. It turns out you don't remember in your cortex, but you do remember in your amygdala, but with no language, just with emotion. And it's those emotional memories that bring the tears.
So the fact that it comes up for Neil now and brings tears, that's not necessarily problematic in my view. It's more like that's part of being a human being.
After I was able to walk, I was really hungry to get back on the bike, but my wrists were still broken, so I couldn't brake. But I could get on my indoor trainer, and that ended up being a lot of fun. I could virtually ride anywhere in the world. So New York Central Park, city streets of Innsbruck or London, or even fantasy worlds. And just hour after hour, I would work there, getting my fitness back, squeezing 3 sessions a week to work physical therapy on my wrists. Finally, my wrist healed and I was ready. It had been 4.5 months. I had survived, I had healed, I had rehabilitated, I was ready to start training. But before I did, I had one more thing I wanted to do. Just a few days before Christmas, I headed out to Gibraltar Road. I felt like I was heading home. The last 4 months have been all about healing. Tomorrow, I start training for my first post-accident triathlon. But today is neither about healing nor training. Today, I return to Gibraltar for the first time since the accident. I'm unsure how it will go. I get started early. It's just 4 days until Christmas, yet it is clear and sunny. There isn't a soul out here. No other riders, no runners, nobody walking, and no cars. Just me and Gibraltar. I love this climb. After more than 100 ascents, it feels so familiar, so comfortable. The air is crisp, views go on forever. I know where the accident site is. My bike watch kept a record of my ride and accurately marked the impact zone. I wonder how it will feel when I get there. Will I react? Will memories come flooding back? As I slowly come upon the site, I'm anxious. But there's no reaction, no memories, no tears, just nothing. I'm disappointed. I had hoped for a catharsis. But then something dawns on me. The accident is in the past. It's gone. The catharsis I'm looking for lies in the future. It's mine to create. That thought triggers something. I start pedaling faster. I'm still slow, but I'm energized now. I reach the top. I'm tired, but it feels like I'm home again. I'm ready to start the next stage of my journey. The last 4 months were hard, but training, I know how to do that. Training is going to be fun. I knew I needed a really special coach, and I had met someone in the prior year, John Ackland. He's coached Ironman, he coached the New Zealand America's Cup team, and a lot of professional athletes.
I got a note telling me that Neil had had a terrible accident. It really shocked me because it sounded like a very bad accident.
I called John from the hospital and I said, would you consider handling a 61-year-old, middle-of-the-pack athlete that, oh, by the way, doesn't know how to walk at the moment?
Obviously, I'd wanted to because I felt that, you know, coaching's all about contributing and adding some positive energy to the situation. Yeah, it's kind of part of, I would say, a coach's nature.
First part of any triathlon training is what's called base training. And basically you do less than you're capable of doing in terms of speed, but for much longer times. It's not hard physically because by definition it's not as hard as you could do, but it's really hard mentally because it's long, slow, boring rides. And I did it for our first segment, I think it was about 11 weeks, and at the end of it, I was able to go up Gibraltar, go across East Camino Cielo, out to Painted Cave Road and back. It's about a 5-hour ride at 60 miles, 6,000 feet elevation gain. So it was a long ride, and I knew I had the base I was going to need for my season. Once you've completed base, the next step is strength training. And this is where Gibraltar actually made a lot of sense because you're going straight uphill and you're doing hard intervals, and it's a lot of work, but it's right up my alley. It's what I love doing. In addition, I spend a lot of time in the gym, and that's unusual for a triathlete. Most triathletes don't go in the gym because they don't want to bulk up. The way I look at it is my body type is already bulked up naturally compared to an endurance athlete, and I need the muscles to be able to carry that weight up the hill, so I intensified my workouts during strength. Final segment of training is always speed training, and this is where you start to go at race pace on routes that are similar to the race you're going to be going to. We decided to race in the Los Angeles Triathlon as a warm-up. It has a course that's different than anything I'd ever ridden. It starts at Venice Beach, is slightly uphill for the next 22 miles, and finally ends with a downhill. That was the first time I'd ridden a course that was continuously uphill for most of the course. That's really a dream course for an endurance athlete. It's pretty tough for someone with my body type that's more of a sprinter type. Where I excel is when I have really hard hills I can go up, and then I come down the other side and it gives me 2-3 minutes to recover, and I just do that the whole race. I knew Los Angeles was going to be tough because I could never recover. I just had to keep it kind of slow and steady the whole way. Los Angeles, very much like hometown. I'd been to Staples Center for years, going to Lakers games with the kids. So we came to town, and it's fun because as you come into registration, there's this intense energy from people all around the world there. They're picking up their packets, they're getting their gear, and everyone has the same goal. Tomorrow morning they're going to be in the same race, and it's a really fun sense of camaraderie. Second thing is it's really the only time I see Team Connect. We don't live in the same town. I'm in Santa Barbara, Holly's in Utah, and Hugh's in Puerto Rico. So we see each other a few times a year at races, and so we get to see each other, and that's always a lot of fun.
Going into LA, I think my focus was entirely on all energy towards Neil. This is his first time back from the accident, and it was one of the first races for me where I really didn't focus on my pre-race rituals, what my time was going to be, what the course profile was. It was just hoping Neil would make it through this race with all the hard work that he did.
And I remember I was in the hotel and I couldn't sleep. And I ended up at about 1 a.m. just deciding, well, this is as good a time as any to start my race prep.
Speaking of nerves, I remember at that race too, I kept watching Neil, watching you thinking, you gotta be so nervous right now. You weren't. I've got my headphones in, trying to zone, do a little meditation. Neil's over there chatting with every athlete that's getting ready for their bike, and he is actually seeing who's the most nervous person here, and he approaches them to try and ease their mind.
I remember thinking I was very happy to be in that race with you. And I remember being very impressed that in what felt like such an incredibly short amount of time, you know, we'd turned around and we're now in a race for real.
So 3:30, alarm goes off, you get ready, you go through your checklist, and then you get in the car, and Hugh and I had to drive out to the beach. You get out there and you start walking, and as you get to the transition area, you can see the light, you can hear the music, you can see all the people. So we walked into transition and just got hit with all the energy of the athletes, and it was such a high. He went off to the swim area to get ready for his swim, and I got my bike racked and I started getting everything ready and going through all of my checklists. And then I heard the horn go off to announce that the race had started. Before too long, Hugh came running up, gave me the timing chip, and I was off. Everyone else had signed up for a 25-mile endurance event, and I was treating it like a 1-mile sprint. Racer after racer just passing everyone. Nobody can go like that for an entire hour. And I had remembered in training, this is a race that's uphill and never gives you a break. Before too long, I just hit the wall. At about mile 20, pretty much all I had, and that's where you finally make the turn and come downhill to the finish. So I was really lucky those last 5 miles were downhill. So I limped through transition, got to Holly, gave her the timing chip, and then she surprised me.
And I'll never forget, I could care less what the time was when you came in, but I was so excited, I just had to give you a big tight hug.
So we ended up coming in second place. Didn't surprise me and didn't bother me. In a lot of ways, I didn't care. It wasn't about winning or losing. Los Angeles was about trying to figure out if I could complete a triathlon, and I absolutely could.
From my memory, I was quite pleased with the watts that had been put out. We still needed to do some work on the execution side because there was a lot of things going on.
But he told me something. He said, when you push that hard in a race and you go that far beyond your capacity, your body feels it and you overcompensate. And by the time next week rolls around in Monte Rio, I think you're going to see a pretty big bump from that. So all in all, it was a successful race. We were happy with it, and it was off to Monte Rio. Vineman Monte Rio was our final warm-up race before Santa Barbara. It's located an hour or so north of San Francisco. So Monte Rio was just off from the very start because we really didn't have a purpose for it. It was really just a practice. And I think all of us kind of felt that. Hugh went off and he did a great swim, came back, gave me the timing chip, and then I was off. But they don't close the road. And that's a big deal. It's a small, windy road, a lot of local traffic, and it just didn't feel safe to me. Sure enough, after about mile 4 or 5, I rounded a bend and there was a rider down, and he wasn't moving. There were some initial first responders there. They were clearly attending to him, and it brought my accident back just instantly. And then I heard the sirens.
And it couldn't have been more than 10 or 15 minutes after Neil left transition that we all heard sirens, and we knew someone on the road was down. And with the amount of sirens we heard, we knew it was something bad.
And at that point, I just completely forgot about the race, and I thought for sure something has happened.
There's nothing I could do. I just rode on. Had a pretty good race, but they slowed us down on the way back in because essentially I think the CHP felt they had kind of lost control of the race. Unfortunately, that meant I was late coming in, and that just kind of fanned the flames in terms of concern on their part.
You were not coming in, and it's the first time I was getting really nervous saying something's happened.
So all in all, I wouldn't say that Monte Rio felt great. Holly actually came up lame and limped in the last few miles. But despite everything, we did win. After the race, I thought this was really difficult for Lee. It was difficult for the team because of the sirens. And I just thought, what am I doing this for? So I told the team afterwards that that's it. Santa Barbara was going to be our last race.
So with 75 days to go, heading into Santa Barbara, you know, the opportunity at that point is to really put some pressure on at that point, and let's just see what we can get out of Neil at that point.
We had set a goal to win Santa Barbara, which is a little bit crazy because we had never won it. And in fact, our best race ever had been at Santa Barbara just a couple years earlier, and we still got smoked. We lost, I think, by 12 minutes to a team of college athletes that were nationally ranked. So there was not a lot to be optimistic about, but nonetheless, that's the goal we had set. I don't think I ever trained as hard as I had this year. I know Holly felt the same way, and Hugh was going nuts in Puerto Rico with his training.
I remember setting my alarm early so I could be up every day at 5 a.m. And I remember setting my second alarm, put my suit back on, head down, and get back in the pool. And there were lots of days where I thought, you know, tired, busy, I don't feel like doing this. And I remember every time thinking, it's going to be real embarrassing if I end up being the slowest person on the team, given what you and Holly have been through.
A couple weeks before the race, we did something I had been doing every year up until then. I went straight up Gibraltar 13 days in a row, doing hard intervals.
When you told me that you wanted to go for the win at Santa Barbara, and I called my coach and I said, I know this is a big difference here, but I also need to win this triathlon. And I remember specifically the workouts that she gave me for the 8 weeks leading up to Santa Barbara were some of the hardest workouts I had ever done. Felt really good coming into it, and knowing that the two of you had put in so much work, we were ready.
I love the morning of a race, especially love the morning of the Santa Barbara Tri, because unlike any other tri in the world, I wake up in my own bed, get on my bike, and I get to ride to the race, which I absolutely love. The whole town's asleep, of course, and you get to gather your thoughts and just get into a great space coming down. And then as you get close to the transition, again, you see the lights, you hear the music, you feel the energy, but it comes to you slowly, and you walk your bike in. It's a hometown race, so you just feel like, all right, I got this.
I really had a fun feeling about the day. I didn't have any expectations about how the team would do, but I felt it would be a very happy day.
And then you rack your bike and you start going through your routine. I got a checklist that takes about an hour to get ready for a race. You hear the national anthem played, which always gets me, and then you hear the klaxon go off, and you know the swimmers are in the water. Once the swimmers go in the water, it's a mile-long swim. You're about 28 minutes before your swimmer gets out, runs up, and hands you the timing chip. And so you just kind of go through your thing and get ready, and then finally Hugh came through. He'd had an outstanding swim, which didn't surprise me. I mean, he wasn't going to leave anything out there.
And it was fun to see him come in and run into transition, smile at Neil and get the chip on Neil's ankle and kind of give him a pat and say, "Go, Dad."
Finally, I'm on my bike on Cabrillo Boulevard and the race has started. I wasn't about to make the same mistake I had made in Los Angeles. This time I started with a more measured pace. I even let some of the cyclists pass me. It's a long race. Santa Barbara is different than other tris in that it's 33 miles and it's a ton more climbing than any other tri we've ever done. The first big climb on this course is Sheffield Road, and you just hunker down. It's about an 8-minute climb. It hurts, but you know at the other end of it, you're going to have a downhill. After Sheffield climb, you have your first big descent, and those are everything for me because I train hard on recovering after hard efforts. And I got down to where I can recover after one of those in about 3 minutes, which is about what you get on the descent and kind of the flats that follow. And then we're into a fun part of the race. You have a long straightaway that's just slightly downhill. A lot of fun. You just put your head down, gather as much speed as you can, and then you come to the second big climb of the race, which is Gubernador Canyon. The top of Gubernador Canyon is as far away from transition as you'll be all day. As I got to the top, I kind of checked times and realized my pace wasn't where it needed to be. I had lost time.
I remember your ride very well because we were watching you live, and I remember checking your progress at the halfway point and seeing you were about 10 minutes back from your targeted pace.
So as we get to the bottom, it's really one of the worst times to have that happen because now you've got that flat that you just came down that was slightly downhill. Now it's slightly uphill, just like Los Angeles. Really my nemesis.
Racing is all about being ready for that crisis moment and finding out a lot about yourself in that crisis moment. And generally that's the thing that decides the event.
And then I saw him. A racer went by me that had my bike exactly. I have an unusual bike, and I'd never seen a bike like mine in any race up to that point, but he had the same bike, same year, same color, same wheels, same everything. And I thought, this is my ticket. Guy on that bike was probably half my age, clearly a good cyclist, and I just locked onto his wheel. Now in a triathlon, you need to leave about 3 bike lengths between you and the guy you're following. So that's what I did. I just locked in 3 bike lengths and didn't let go. And we went mile after mile, minute after minute, staying right on that wheel. He tried to break away from me several times, but I was focused. I wasn't thinking about the pain, I wasn't thinking about the race, I was just thinking, don't let go of this guy's tire. So I didn't, and we made it all the way through. I got through that really hard, slightly uphill part, and we hit the final climb, Toro Canyon. So my younger friend, at this point, is lighter than me, he's a better climber, and he just took off, which I had expected. And now I was alone. And being alone is never a good thing in a race because when you're trying to keep your pace up, you have nothing to gauge it against. It was about a 10-minute climb, and I had to figure something to get me through it without letting my guard down. I started thinking about all the people who had been in my life since the accident. Lee, who had been there every day, day and night. My sons and their families. All the doctors, nurses, clinicians, technicians, the therapists, and how everyone had so fundamentally helped me. It kept my mind off the pain. I didn't think about that. I kept my speed up, and when I looked down, I still had 2 minutes to go. But then I remembered something a previous coach had once told me. He said, Neil, anybody can do anything for 2 minutes. So I said, okay, that's it. And I just put my head down and I did that last 2 minutes. The top of Toro Canyon climb is as high as you're going to be the entire day, but you've done all the climbing. Everything else is downhill. You've done the hard part. The rest is easy. I began my descent, but I had a problem. There were 3 or 4 guys in front of me content to go slow, and that's fine for them, but I wasn't going to have worked that hard to make up time in a race, only to give it up by going slow on a descent of all things. So I swung around them, got by them, and then here I was on this big hill. I let gravity sink its teeth into me, and I just flew down that descent. It took me maybe 4 or 5 minutes to cover the next 2 miles, and then it was mostly flat. I flew through that, and finally I hit Cabrillo, came down the chute, went through the transition area. I gave the timing chip to Holly. She was off in the run, and just like that, my race was over.
The last 3 miles was flat coming in, and I remember I was in the pain cave, and my pace had slowed down a little bit. But what I really remember thinking is, as I was looking out on the ocean, okay, this is one of my favorite courses, love being in Santa Barbara, but more importantly, there was a little feeling of sadness that this is the last time that I will be doing this with this team.
Holly's a warrior. She gave everything she had in this race. After she finished, she just about collapsed, but like all of us, she was so happy. It was like a weight had been lifted from our shoulders. In a triathlon, it's never immediately clear if you've won or lost, so we always go have breakfast and come back later to see how we've done.
And I remember saying, oh, that's all right, you guys go ahead. I'll be right there. Just give me a minute. And And so I remember standing there, and a different team that I had recognized from that morning had been on the other side and kind of got a peek at it first. And I saw this guy's face just drop, and I hate to say it this way, but I remember seeing that and thinking, good. And so I watched him as he turned around to his team and goes, second place, guys. And I remember thinking, well, I know that feeling, and I know they have second. And that was kind of a panicked moment for me, because what I realized right in that moment is they have second place. So if we didn't get first place, we either got third or we're off the podium. And it was the first time I'd actually really thought about that, because the only thing I'd been thinking about was just go as fast as you can. And I hadn't really thought, what happens if we don't even place? What if this is just a bad race? What if we didn't have it this year? And I remember seeing as they posted it, not even really wanting to look, but looking up, and I saw Team Connect, first place. And I just started crying a little bit. And this guy put his hand on my shoulder and goes, "It's all right, buddy. You can do better next year." I was like, yeah, I love you, man. You don't get it, but thank you. I appreciate it. And I remember taking a picture of it and then walking over to breakfast and asking you guys if I could have a minute and announcing that we'd won. And I remember it being a special feeling.
So rewarding. And here's the thing, we won by 41 seconds. In a 3-hour and 21-minute race, 41 seconds is nothing.
After Santa Barbara, I got a text from Neil, and they'd won the race and he'd gone pretty well. You know, here he was a year ago, basically lying in a crushed windscreen on the bonnet of the car. So the fact that he came back, I guess the biggest thing that I feel from as a coach is relief. That's what you want for somebody. You want them to be back, to feel whole, to feel themselves again.
It was a year of grit and determination and resilience, and he touched a lot of lives. I don't know if he realizes how much he touched other lives with all the lessons that he gave.
Thankful that I had an opportunity to compete one last time with my dad, because not everyone gets that, but I did. And it's something that will always be an incredibly important piece of my life.
When I reflect on this last year, I just think of it as the biggest gift that we've ever gotten. I am so grateful. It changed who we are, and I wouldn't want to be anybody else.
So this story started when I hit that truck, but to me, this is a love story, or rather, 3 love stories. First, it's a love for Gibraltar and for cycling. I still ride Gibraltar several times a week. That said, I've stopped racing. I think back to going all out down that final hill in my last race. If I hadn't, we wouldn't have won. But at what risk? Even a small rock could have caused a catastrophic accident. Second, this is a love story for those who work so hard to build me back up. I am so grateful. But most of all, this is a love story for Lee and I. We've always been close, but after the accident, Lee was by my side every minute. That brought us closer than we've ever been. And that's the real story.
Wash me in the water, cleanse me in the mercy of your love. I need a heavenly touch, 'cause I'll be backsliding. I need a little guiding for my soul. Only heaven knows, 'cause I just need a helping hand. It's gonna help me stand. It's gonna help me stand. 'Cause I just need a helping hand. that's gonna help me stand. But every now and then I get a feeling in my bones that I'm just wandering on my own. So I hit my knees and I'm crying